Hey, folks, happy Thursday, and welcome to DisGRUNTled. We're back again with you this week. Today's conversation is not structured. Today, we are going to just, it seems as if our good buddy Jason's gears have been ground, much like mine were a couple weeks ago. And so we're going to focus on that today because I think it's probably, there's a lesson to be learned in all of this. Jason, offline, we were talking about what you labeled the effing excuse monster. If you would please take as much time as you need and what do you mean by that?
Dude, I am sick and tired of people having built-in excuses for everything, for failures, for malfeasance. Nobody is held critically to standard in any way, shape, or form. We live in a clown world right now. Like there's nothing about with what's going on that lines up. Like none of it makes any sense. And for me, I've had some personal things in my business that have caused me to just take a further and deeper look because, as a veteran, when we take people in to our tribe, it's an important thing that we feel like they have our six. When somebody's in that group for me, they're just as important a piece of the puzzle as anyone else, myself included. And when you're continually let down by poor decision making and what can be perceived as the excuse monster, which I wanted to use another word for it, but somebody told me I couldn't. It's deflating, and it kind of gets back to some of those other conversations we've had about people in the veteran community where we think we're killing it, we're being killed by it because we always want to try to do the right thing, and a lot of times when we're doing the right thing, nobody is living up to the other side of that, not discussed relationship. And I don't feel that. I don't feel that amongst many veterans.
What do you mean by that, though? The not discussed relationship?
Well, it's like you and I, right? When we first met, immediately, for those of you that don't know, just a short time ago,
year and a half, maybe?
A year and a half, I had that immediate bond, like that trust. It's an unspoken thing. It's a thing that I think a lot of us in the veteran community, when we meet, fellow veterans who live the same way that we do, we just you can lay it down, right? Like I don't need to have my defenses up because this guy or gal has got my back. I don't have to worry about that. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I bring forward, and you can call it a naivete that I have, where I want to see the good in people and situations. But ultimately, you get to a point where you're just like, "What the am I doing?" You don't have to bleep that. I did that myself.
Thank you.
But why? Like, why do we keep doing this? Why do we continually enable people to not have to stand up to the consequences for the actions that they righteously deserve? Nobody gets in trouble for doing illegal things. It seems like the people that follow the letter of the law are the ones that get, the book handed to them. It's your common criminal that gets bounced in and out of the system. Doesn't seem to ever have to account for their misdeeds, and then you've got people that try to go through their life and they live an honest moral life, and they have one slip up and they end up eating a crust or they end up just eating turds. Yeah, and it's just been frustrating the hell out of me when I continually turn on my iFunny because I don't watch the news, and I get it. Here we go. But just seeing the foolishness of it all, and I don't know how we got here. It seems like it was a pretty fast, slippery slope, and just a basic accountability for your own actions. Something that I think most veterans have. Like we have that built in. Sometimes we don't want it.
Yeah, you're right. Because I was just going to say, I think even those of us who society maybe would label shitbags, or I guess I don't know what a really good word is, but less than adequate, still at least take ownership of their of their downfalls, right? Like they'll still tell you, yeah, I screwed up. I did the wrong thing. And even if they're not trying to do better, they'll tell you that. Like, I'm just doing what I'm doing.
Yep.
Right. And maybe it's partly because that's kind of what's bred into you from the get-go, right? Integrity is something that where I was raised in the Army was pushed hard.
Right.
And I think that was a value that I latched onto that I really tried to instill on our kids also, because I believe at the end of the day, if you are not a man or even just a person of integrity, you just can't be trusted to do anything.
Oh, right.
Right?
The two things you never give away, your morality and your integrity.
Right.
You have nothing else without those two.
Yeah. And so, like, to me, it's a super important thing. And so the other thing that you said that kind of stood out to me was that when you let people in, you kind of just assume that they're going to have your six in the foxhole. And I completely understand what you're saying. And that is purely, in my opinion, that is purely something that we in our culture, the warrior culture has. Especially those individuals who have any type of combat training, I guess I would say, because that's how you train, right? You know, when you go into a room and you stack up the same way, it's the same guys, the same weapon systems, they're moving the same way. You do the same thing all the time. So you never have to question it. And then you get comfortable. And that's kind of where that idea of complacency kills comes in, because you kind of get complacent to that. You get complacent to having your buddies with you that you know are proficient, that know what they're doing, they know their job. And then now you put other people with you in these situations, and they don't have those same values. And maybe one of the pitfalls that we fall into is that we expect people just to understand and just see it.
Yeah, that's the lesson I'm learning with humility today, is that people don't have it. They don't. There's no need for it. There's no selfless service left.
No.
And I'm talking on a whole. Obviously, like,
it's rare.
There's a lot of people in my life that I 100% know have it, but it's not like it used to be. I mean, your percentages are so high. You just think about your buddies, man. Just your regular buddies from work. To whatever extent, they do have your six. They understand that when you're there, you take care of one another.
Yep.
We've lost that ability, that compassion, for each and every one of us, knowing that we're going through some type of battle. If it's a health issue, or if it's a financial circumstance issue, if it's an employment issue, like, we all know that we all have. There's shit going on behind the scenes.
Oh yeah.
And the fact that people lack the empathy and then the resolve to just wake up and choose to be decent people is lost. I mean, I know I'm not, I'm definitely not painting with a really dark hued rag here when it comes to the veteran community, because I say I'm wrong all the time. Like, I do wrong all the time, even if it's not with intent.
Yeah.
But just that simple action of humility in a situation is one of the hardest things for me to understand right now, considering the proverbial clown world that we live in, where we can't identify simplistic things for what they are. We can't rally around very basic goals for all humanity and for our own country. I mean, it's wow. It's a shock. I mean, it's a smack in the face. Really, we don't disagree on all that much. I don't care how far left or how far right you are. When it comes to basic decency, we all kind of sing the same tune. But yet here
you would think so.
You would think so. I know I'm not talking about politicians, because we'd have to actually get back to a point in time where we actually talked about our politicians as statesmen. And I challenge anyone out there to go look that up. our politicians used to be statesmen. It was a burden to be a leader in our government.
Yeah. Right.
And then when one was found to make immoral decisions or decisions against their voting bloc, then they got smeared with the word politician.
Yeah.
Well, weird. Now we call them all politicians from the get-go, right? So it turns,
and probably rightfully so.
Well, yeah. I mean, I hate to make the joke, but it'd be nice to see if they at least had their, on the back of their suit that they wore all the emblems of all the people that pay them. It's Senator Johnson speaking on behalf of DeSantis or whatever.
Yeah.
Insert corporation here, But it's dwindling down into our population where it doesn't matter where we go. We have the same nonsense. The amplification and frequency, of course, if you're in politics, is much higher. But just who in the hell can't wake up and be a decent person anymore? And I'm lost for words right now. Not really, but
it's funny that you were saying about the politicians wearing the patches. Mm-hmm. Just recently, I was watching an interview. Do you ever watch Theo Von?
Yeah. Yes.
Well, he interviewed. I shouldn't say he even interviewed. He gave Jesse Ventura a platform to talk for 2.5 hours. I think it's from like a year ago or something. But Jesse was talking about that these politicians should be forced to wear like what did he say? Like a NASCAR driver's get up, like the onesie thing, with all the logos of
right.
who's paying them to do what. And he said, I'll tell you what, a lot of things would make sense about where legislation is being written and where these elected officials are voting and earmarking money. It'd be a whole lot more clear if you could see who's donating to their campaigns.
Yeah.
And I'll say this, man. Jesse Ventura he's a very interesting dude. And he says some pretty off the wall shit. But every now and then he drops this little bead of knowledge and it makes you go, well, god dang. Maybe he's right.
Oh, do you see? Remember how he had that one TV show, like conspiracy theories?
Conspiracy theory, yeah.
Oh, that got pulled off the air pretty
They
fast.
banned it.
Yeah, flying.
He was talking about it on this thing. Anybody who had it that was part of the production team, they woke up one day and it was gone off all of their stuff. Anything that was connected to power and internet.
Wow,
it was just gone.
That's crazy.
All of those shows are gone. So I mean. But again, now we're off in the weeds. But
I think the highlight here is when you have people that are in these positions doing what could be perceived as the wrong thing day in and day out. How does the population not see that and then emulate it, right? I mean, that's it's the same thing we talk about with our kids. Be the model, be the role model at home that you want your kids to become as adults. And so when we constantly see the adults, the leaders in our society playing all these shenanigans and playing all these games, I guess it's, fruit of the fig tree.
Yeah.
That they're going to kind of be that way in small forms. And, right now, the one that kind of comes to mind for me is, there are situations that people find themselves in that are difficult. They're challenging, create strife. But at what point do you quit causing harm to others? And people just don't have that shutoff switch anymore. They go fully nuclear.
Is broken.
Their moral compass, that shit is shot. I mean, that's I don't know how I know how you demagnetize a compass, but in the digital world, I was going to try to come up with an iPhone, whatever comparison, but it just doesn't work, right? It's like their moral compass is drawn on a piece of paper and they can just shift it and change it to whatever they want it to be that day. And I guess when you see these things happening on a larger scale, of course, there's going to be some trickle down effects, but it's how just wake up and be decent. Like that, we do not set the bar so freaking high that it can't be achieved. You know, there's show up, go do your job. If you fail at your job, say I failed, knock your boots off, and hit it again tomorrow and do well. There's nothing that stops us from that. I mean, anything that we've learned in this world is the world loves a comeback.
Yeah.
We love the story of the phoenix, you know, where it goes, it crashes, and then it rises from the ashes. And it goes on to become this even more amazing thing.
Fixius.
You know? Yeah. I mean, I know it's small, but, you know, I shit the bed all the time.
Literally? No. Yes.
Probably. Yeah. I don't know. Back to that diaper thing. But, you know, I mean, it's so simple. Like, the fact that we have these problems that we have is just because nobody can look in the mirror and just own up to whatever did happen and try to do the right thing. And sometimes you're going to play a hand that just can't be won. But the goal is to play out the hand. It's not everybody else's fault every day. Nobody woke up to chose to screw you over. You know, what did you do?
I wonder just that sometimes. Like, sometimes I want to ask people, what is it about you that makes you think that I give two shits about what you got going on?
Do you want to know what I think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Professional victimhood. We see it day in and day out. You know, there's no accountability. I'm a victim. Well, if I'm a victim, I've got to play the hard cards that I have.
But these are also the same people, bro, that if you were down on your luck and shirtless on one knee, hungry and tired and beat up, they're going to walk right past you.
Mm-hmm.
And you know that already. Most people do know that already.
Right.
But yet these are the people that if the tables were turned, they're going to stop and they're going to help this person. And this person already knows that they would not be doing the same thing. They would not be giving the same assistance. They would not reach out a lending hand.
Oh.
But when the opportunity comes to be a victim, they're certainly going to take it.
First one in line.
And so it makes me wonder, like, where did we get to when did we get to a place in this country where we're afraid of hard work and we don't want to do what it takes to succeed and to persevere and to come out on the other end of this big cloud of shit with at least one or two victories? You're not going to win them all. It's not possible. But you certainly can find a reason to put in some effort and hold your head high at the end of the day. I think it's very rare, actually, and I'm sure somebody out there is gonna tell me different. But I believe that it's very rare that there is a lot of people walking this earth that have zero positive things that happen to them at least once a day.
Right. Well, and they don't even recognize the positive. You know, that's probably 90% of the problem. They don't even realize what good is. They don't see the win. They're the person that's always looking for it's the individual that wants to have $1 million, but they want to get it in $1 million idea. They don't realize if every day, and I'm using this number with hyperbole, if you put $1 away a day, you're going to get there. Yep. But they don't see that. They see this massive windfall, something that is so unlikely ever going to occur, that every day they're going to have the same victimhood philosophy or mentality. And it's sad because it drives down everybody who's trying to do the right thing day in and day out, because it's really not that tough, you know, to help somebody out.
I agree. I mean, it doesn't take a bunch of money. It doesn't take a bunch of time. Even just a simple hello or how you doing. Sometimes people are just looking to talk to somebody.
Change the entire trajectory of their day. Maybe
Absolutely.
their week, maybe their life.
Absolutely. Where do you think that type of thing was, I don't know if you want to call it trained out of you, but like it was done, right? Like you are never going to go back to that if it was ever even possible. Where on your journey through life up to this point do you think that that was something that just wasn't going to be part of who you were? Because I don't believe that, contrary to popular belief, folks, if you've never if you've never seen or met Jason in person, this guy's a unit. Okay, he's you're a tall, intimidating guy to a lot of people.
Maybe.
See, even the phone is scared of him.
But Dixon's calling.
But at some point, man, through your journey, you knew that this is not going to be who you are. I am not going to be, what did you call it? Professional victimization?
Oh, professional victim.
A professional victim. And you were going to work hard. You were going to teach your kids to work hard. You're going to treat others as you would like to be treated. And so like, that's the big one. I can remember being in second grade and being taught, you know, if you want people to be nice to you, you got to be nice to them. And so like all that stuff has just been out the window. But where do you think that was solidified for you? Do you think it has anything to do with the military? Do you think it was the way you were brought up? Do you think it's just inherent in you?
Well, and I think this is one of those things, especially in the veteran community, that's unique, because I think a lot of us have a lot of those characteristics. Life comes at you fast, and depending upon your path, certain things get beaten out of you, certain things get beaten into you. I would say, and I have no data to support this, but I think the really good people that joined the military, that served, that spent time in the box or anywhere else, and had times where maybe there were questions on the future, I think those galvanizing moments will lock you in for life. Like, it's something you can't get away from. You're going to have moments where you separate a little bit from that. But I really think one of the greatest pieces that comes out of war fighting are who people can be. And I think it's something lost, because, you know, you go back to the Vietnam vets, the way that they came back was abhorrent, you know, and hearing more of those stories from some of our mutual friends, gaining a better understanding of not necessarily what happened in country, but just how they were treated when they came home. That was their galvanizing moment. Like, they had already done the dance. They had done the dirty. And then they came back and they were not treated well. So for them, that was the galvanizing moment that they became who they were. And I think World War II was a little bit different. You know, I think they had their galvanizing moments in country, and they were celebrated upon their return. And so that created a completely different trajectory arc for that era of veteran. And I think, you know, the way that the post 9/11 vets came back, I think our arc is set for the positive. You know, I don't remember a lot of negative stories about, you know, certainly not any personal experiences for me coming home being negative. You know, as time goes on, there's some negative stigmas out there about who we are, and some of them are righteously earned, no question about it. We're pig-headed. Yes. We've got, you know, there's certain lines we draw in the sand that other people don't. But I think that's where that galvanization comes from, and understanding that and seeing that across generations of warfighter should give people a better idea of kind of just setting the tone for expectation.
Do you think that those values that you were speaking of, like the values in that Vietnam and World War II, like those arcs and those trajectories, do you think that those have made it through the generations and made it to us? You know what I mean? Like those values and all that stuff. Do you think that they've made it through all of those? Like the World War II values made it through because they trained the World War II guys trained the Vietnam guys, or the Korea vets trained the Vietnam guys who trained the Desert Storm guys who trained us.
Yeah.
And now we're training the next generation. Don't you think that some of those values and just those mindsets just organically were sent down to us through training?
Well, certainly. I mean, just reading the SMART book for anybody that's been to basic training, you know, understanding the 7 core values. You know, I mean, you're saying them with repetition for a reason, right? It's the same reason why, you know, if you want to lie with statistics, you need to go through repetition. Somebody needs to hear something a certain amount of time before it starts to ingrain in their psyche, and it just kind of becomes part of who you are. So I think having a lot of those older trainers bringing that through and then making it real, why these things were important, is absolutely astute. It's spot on, right? Because the best of the best are theoretically who trains the next group, which is probably why you and I never wore a hat like that. But you know, and I think it's something that's always going to be there. I think it comes down to like the actual programming, how they decide they're going to make us. There's no question in that, like why they do that, because you need to have a fighting force that's willing to do things that normal people don't do. You know, a lot of us have those characteristics. And so through that training cycle, they become, you know, maybe a superpower of sorts. And I'm not saying that like a real superpower, but, you know, when you are a natural leader and now you're taught how to be a leader, you just became a really good leader. You know, and a lot of people have a certain tangent that they excelled in, and if it was something that they hammered home on, that's something that they'll just never get away from because it cannot be bred out. That's just my dumb idea on it. I don't know.
It makes sense though. I mean, because I think that you can pick out who the natural leaders are. You know, I think that when we were going through basic training, imagine yourself a drill sergeant, right? And in the first 3 days of basic training with your platoon, you know who the natural leaders are by then.
Oh yeah.
Who are the guys that got the guts? Who are the ones that have the ears of the other soldiers? You know, you know who your physical leaders are, like who are the physical powerhouses that are going to motivate people to push themselves on runs and ruck marches and all that stuff. But then you have those other guys who are going to challenge the rest of the platoon to be smart.
Yep.
And I think that in many cases they purposely keep those people out of leadership positions unless absolutely necessary.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Because we had some real dummies.
You mean your bay boss wasn't the one you would have fixed the bayonet for?
Absolutely not. No. In fact, he was the one everyone hated the most.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say hated, but
there's a psychological effery going on right there.
Yeah.
Right. So you're taught, regardless of who the person is, how you respond to them, who they are, based upon position, you're going to follow. You have to. That's just the way it works.
But we would have fought for him.
100%. But that's what I'm saying, right? You learned that you're going to respect the title, the place, and the person position. You know, and probably not in that order, but that's, you know, respect the rank, respect the position, blah, 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 blah.
But you don't have to respect the man or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And so, and I think, you know, they pound that one in day one. I mean, it's a great one to pound in on.
And so maybe this is exactly what you're talking about. We learned from day one that no matter what you say, no matter what you do, no matter how you feel, if you hate my guts, and outside of the military, if you saw me in the street on fire, you wouldn't piss on me to save my life. But inside the military, you still hate me just as much as if I was outside. But now I'm telling you, because I'm the platoon sergeant, we're taking that hill.
Yep.
You're going to fight for me because I told you we need to. There's a mission, and our mission will be accomplished by any means necessary. And so maybe that's part of what you're talking about, where you let people into your foxhole thinking they're going to have your back, because even if they hate my effing guts, they're still going to watch my back. They're not going to betray me. They're not going to forsake me. And we're going to keep this train rolling.
Absolutely.
And we're going to do good things. And then that doesn't happen because those people have no idea what it means to be loyal to another person or another cause other than themselves, because they're selfish as hell.
Yeah, it's broken, man. It's a hard one. And you understand, why these businesses, have hiring problems. It's not because they can't find people. But if you're in a corporation, you have to actually take the time to proof people.
Yeah.
You have to understand if you're bringing somebody in that's cancerous, that's going to cause other problems. Well, I'd rather be short-staffed than be cancer-ridden.
Absolutely. Most companies would.
Most companies would. And I guess, lesson learned. Defer away from that. I mean, it's, you want to see the best in humanity. And that's probably going to be a hard one for me to ever shift on. But I certainly will have my hackles up a heck of a lot more. The foxhole is going to be a little bit smaller.
Well, and I used to tell people, I spent, 3 or 4 years or whatever it was working for the state, doing veteran employment work, so helping vets find jobs. And I used to tell my clients all the time, like, you're not going to a job interview to prove that you're qualified. That's why we spent 4 hours making you a good resume. They wouldn't have contacted you if they didn't think you were qualified to do the work. You're going to a job interview to see how you fit into the culture. Mostly, that's my opinion. Right? And of course, to answer questions about, if Sally stole some scissors and John told you about it, would you tell Rhonda? Are you a narc type thing? But mostly it's for whether or not you're going to fit in with it, because they're not going to fire 3 people that they think you may not get along with to hire you. So your job interview really is mostly about, do you fit in there?
Right. Yeah. Can you be a part of it? And I thought as soon as you started to talk about it, I started to think back, like when I got hired and I was hired into corporate America. I really want to interview my old boss. I think she would be a wonderful interview because she got me probably at my rawest.
Yeah.
Like that guy that just driven. I don't care what the issues are going to be. We're going to drive through and accomplish the mission, which I think in corporate America is probably unique, but I think it's a burden. I think it would be challenging as hell, because if I went back and I had to be my boss at that time, holy shit. Like I would either ask for threefold the paycheck, or I'd just be like, I'm not interested. Like I'm going to go get a janitorial job somewhere, like just mindless, because that's what we are. We're focused on what that output is going to be. We demand out of people what we are willing to give them, and I think that is where that biggest piece is, because I'm willing to go to the end of the bridge for everybody. And when you realize people are only willing to go out 2 steps, it's an unequal situation that is rarely going to find success long haul. And
would you classify it as like unreasonable expectations?
Absolutely, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I do, but for me, it was.
But not like it's a bad thing, right? Like not like you're at fault for it. It's just you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what you don't realize yet.
Right. You don't know what you don't know until you know it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
right.
Mr. Hall, if you're listening, ha 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 ha. It's his favorite line. But it is right. And so, but I think that's something, and that's probably what's grinding on me right now, is the fact that I know how far I would go. And then to never get that reciprocation back is that's one that sucks. And the hell, I mean, and whatever, it is what it is. And I would hope over time things get better, which they nowhere to go but up.
Well, but I think that you're not alone in that, though, man. I think that there's a lot of people that spend a lot of time. My wife is one of them. Babe, please don't be mad at me, but I'm using you as an example. But sometimes my wife, I think, she spends a lot of time thinking about and stewing over the idea that, like, if she thinks that she's owed an apology about something, let's say.
Okay.
And it needs to come from somebody that she's never going to get it from. It's just never going to happen. And she'll be upset about it forever. And I don't blame her.
Right. Well, that'd be a tough situation to be in.
But at the same time, like, I try to encourage her to, babe, like, you got to think about this. Like, you are the only person in this situation that is being hurt is her.
Right.
Because this other person maybe doesn't even know that you're upset or that you think you're owed an apology. And if they do, they probably just don't care, or you would have got it by now.
That's just it. Like, we're the only ones that focus on it.
Yeah.
Like, nobody else.
Exactly.
It's not ruining their day.
Yes.
It's ruining yours.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's hard because you expect that out of people. If you're a decent person, you expect decency. That's it. It's not unrealistic to expect an apology.
I don't think so either.
But it's hard. I don't hear a lot of people say, "I'm sorry," with meaning. And even if it's just meaningless, to let the words come out of your mouth,
just to
through
hear
your
it
vocal
sometimes.
cords, just to hear it, that's enough to, like, just lay everything down. And you bridge a lot more gaps through humility than you ever will through ego and hubris. I think there's too much ego and hubris. Not enough acknowledgement of fault in this world.
I think that you're probably right. Clearly you're right. If we were able as a country to acknowledge when we were wrong, there'd be a lot of problems solved.
Right.
But, I mean, at the end of the day, we can really only affect the things that are here, that are in front of us, that are tangible. We can do a lot of thinking about it. We can do a lot of talking to others about it. We can do a lot of stewing over it and just being pissed off all the time. But really, at the end of the day, it's just hurting us. I don't know, and I don't know where all of a sudden I got a degree of some sort in psychology. But I did. But I think that this is a great example for a conversation for Disgruntled, because it shows that our culture, this population of people who we like it too, as the people in the culture, to be built up as warriors and to be strong and fearsome and gruesome when we need to be. But there's also deeper thoughts. There's also other things going on. And I like that we talked about this today, because I think that it's a conversation starter. And so, as always, we hope that these are conversations that spark other conversations for you and your families and things like that, because the whole goal of being here is to do just that and more when the opportunity arises. But for now, just to have these conversations and talk about these things. These are part of what makes veterans and members of the military different from civilians. And I think that's a really good example.
Yeah. I have a greater understanding why our culture wants to go move into the woods and never talk to anyone.
For like Rambo,
Shooter. I mean, the list goes on.
Shooter, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that cabin he had was pretty dope in Shooter.
Yep.
Okay, well, I think that, do you have anything else to close it out?
I'm out. I'm done.
You know what time it is.
Time for lunch?
My man. Hey, you got out of 2 of them last week. Ladies and gentlemen, is that point of the show where we do final thoughts. Jason, you're up, buddy.
Well, thank you, Richard.
You're welcome.
So kind. I don't know. Just kind of sitting here today thinking about this. My final thought would be just thank you if you are listening to this, because this was better therapy for me than sitting over at the VA and talking through with a bona fide therapist. I think Richie's right. I don't think in the warrior ethos we spend enough time talking about the humility, the humblers. Humble pie is it's just that. It's a dish served. It's a dish that needs to be eaten from time to time. And I would hope that maybe through this, that regardless of your place in the world, that maybe you show a little humility driving forward if you're not already doing so. And there's that.
Very good. Very good. And I will add to that by saying, again, these are the conversations that I think are important that we have. Our goal for being here is to ensure that moving forward, we have a way to be able to understand each other, because after all, we got to work in the same places. We have to navigate the same stores. We got to live amongst each other and in neighborhoods and all that. And just by bringing understanding to a situation, I think solves a lot of stuff. And not that there's a lot of problems, but I think that we could all be better neighbors to each other, maybe build community. And I think that that's important for everybody, not just families with little kids or anything like that. I think it's all very important. And so let's spend some time. My challenge to you is to spend some time and think about how you can hold yourself accountable, whether it be something big or small. And we'll start there. Well, just hold yourself accountable, whether you say something to anybody or not. But just hold yourself accountable. If you come up short, big deal. Fix it tomorrow. But we got to start somewhere. And maybe that's a good place to start. But anyway, we've run out of time for this week. We will see you all again next week. Thank you for joining us. Good night.